name is Peter Propp, and the timer just started.
Hi, my name is John Blossom, and welcome to the first episode of our video series, 10-Minute Strategy. For today's show, we're going to focus right where you should focus when you start a new marketing initiative, whether it's for a corporate project, a new company, or a new marketing campaign. 3 things we want to focus on today: naming, branding, and web address strategy. Peter, first off, can you help our viewers understand the differences between these 3 key topics?
Right. So when I think about naming, I think about the name of a product, a service, or what's generally called an offering. This is the thing that people are actually going to buy. So that name has to be pretty descriptive, because ultimately they're going to be writing a check to pay for it. And so you need that to be strong. A brand name needs to potentially be the same as the product name, but in many cases, people are going to want to have a brand name that's an umbrella that can support that particular initial offering, but potentially multiple offerings. Right. And so the 2 need to have a relationship that's logical and supported between the 2. And then the third part of that is the URL strategy. So your web address needs to be something that you can get. It has to be attainable. It has to be something that people are actually searching for and is going to show up within the search context for Google and the other search engines. And it has to relate to the brand name and the product name. So ideally, the brand name is the same as the URL. That's the most important way to go. And you need to make sure that all those pieces line up in a logical manner.
So you have 3 things that we need to be looking at. What really makes sense to people out there who are actually buying things as a brand name, right. How it fits into your overall corporate branding, and then to figure out how people are actually going to find it on the web, where people are actually looking for it.
Exactly.
And that last part, it seems, is pretty important in terms of what people are trying to do with their Google search engine strategy. What's the best way to go around making the strategy work? If I have a product or brand that I'm creating for a corporate initiative, that may be something that's a short-term product or something that's fitting into a long-standing brand, how do I get people's attention in Google and still support a real marketing strategy?
Well, let me give you an example based on my customer, Health Globe. They're in the medical travel space, which is interesting. We won't get into it right now, but they have a lot of customers they're trying to reach, and what they're realizing over time is that the customers they're trying to reach don't search for health. That's a too generic a term. Those people are searching for topics that are of personal interest to them that relate to specific medical areas. So we established a web address called In Vitro Globe to reach the fertility market. So people that are interested in getting in vitro, that are having fertility issues, will search on in vitro. And when they do that, we come up very high in their search ranking. So In Vitro Globe and Health Globe fit together as brands that are as a product set and a brand that are logical. And luckily, both those names were available. Actually, for Health Globe, we have myhealthglobe.com. We made a compromise, but it still will show up from a search point of view.
So people who are out there trying to figure out what to do with in vitro fertilization will go to Google. They'll be looking for the term in vitro, and this particular website domain name will be associated with that term, and yes. Google is going to give that a little extra juice.
Exactly. Well, my understanding is that if the term is in the highest level domain before the .com, you're going to get the highest ranking from Google, all other things being equal.
Well, that's good, but the question becomes, I suppose, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Does our web strategy come first, or does our traditional product branding strategy come first? How do we balance that in the age of Google?
I think what happened is it's become more complicated because you can't have a product name that doesn't make sense. People are not going to buy it. So you can't only have a product name based on something that's going to come high on Google. It doesn't make any sense, and Google would never really want you to do that. They're trying to find what people are looking for. So again, you need to start with your customer and figure out what they're trying to buy and the way they describe it. If you build a brand that supports or naming strategy that supports the product and an overall brand if you want to do that at a higher level, and then a URL strategy that supports both. And you're going to make compromises along the way, but you should ultimately feel comfortable that you've got that whole story, settled in the way you want to make it work.
So it's a balance between
Right.
what you're doing on the website strategy for search and what you're trying to do to appeal to people. You're intersecting, it sounds like, at a very specific level, though,
Right.
where you're finding a very specific itch that people are trying to scratch on the web.
I think so. I think it's important.
So what happens then when we're trying to do these specific itch-oriented domain names
Right.
when we have a big corporate brand name? How do we balance corporate brand in the internet environment versus these specialized domain names?
Right. I mean, I think you could do it two ways, depending on the comfort level of the corporate marketing team in having domains that might appear outside the corporate entity. You could have a web URL that's totally separate on a separate server, and Google will recognize it as a separate entity, and it will get plenty of traffic that way, and you can refer traffic back and forth, and that can be really terrific. Most bigger corporations are not going to settle for that. They'll own a brand name and then have it refer to a page deep within the corporate site. And as long as they're consistent, Google will definitely help them find what they're doing. And a good example of that is the brand I used to work for at IBM called WebSphere. They own WebSphere.com. Actually, they paid good money to get it. But what they do with WebSphere.com is it refers directly to a spot within the IBM domain.
So you're out there and you're finding good domain names for these really hot products that fit into your overall strategy, and then all of a sudden you discover, wait a minute, somebody has that domain name
Right.
already. These folks are called squatters. How do we deal with squatters out there who are going out there and snatching up domain names? Is that really a problem?
I mean, I think it is a problem. There's a lot of really good names that you'll try to get, and they're taken. Often you can negotiate to get them if it's important enough to you. Those squatters are there to sell stuff. They're not there to keep those names indefinitely. There's a price that they have in mind, and if you've got real money, they're gonna eventually sell, and you need to decide if that's worth it for you. But what I found in renaming several things this past year, and even further back, is that there are plenty of good names that are still available. And I think the reason for that is that many of the web squatting companies, because they're not marketers, they're not really strategic in the way they buy up these domains. They're actually using software, robots, to jumble words together in such a way that they think is logical. But in fact, the human mind is more logical than a robot in terms of at least knowing what people are looking for and what's a logical name that refers to something that you can understand.
And we kind of discovered that ourselves in
Right.
setting up the series, right?
Exactly.
Tell folks what happened.
So John and I were sitting in a room 2 weeks ago deciding that we want to do a video blog, a webcast series, and John said, well, it's got to be short. It's got to be 10 minutes. I said, well, what if 10-minute strategy was available? And sure enough, it was available, so we were able to purchase it. It doesn't make sense to us that a good name like 10-minute strategy is available, but here it is. And we own it, and we're very pleased. I found that with Health Globe and Vitro Globe, both those names are available, or to a degree that we were able to get them. And it seems that if you try hard enough to find a strategy, find a name. Oh, there's our timer. Let me just finish the thought. Finding a name that matches up from a URL point of view, from a brand, and from a product point of view. Just spend enough time on that so that all of them make enough sense. Be prepared to make compromises. Be prepared to spend some money if you're not willing to make a compromise. But those names are still out there, and having all three working well is awfully important to the success of a business these days.
Well, it sounds like we kept ourselves pretty honest about giving people a 10-minute strategy session
Absolutely.
here, and I hope that this has been useful to people. Tune in again to our next video on 10-minute strategy. Thanks.
Thank you.